You mentioned your brother was
Yes.
someone you respected. Who are other people of that? I mean, during that period, your, 5 to 10,
Oh,
10 to 15. Who are
there,
the people that you think
there
about?
was a guy named Mr. Nelson. We called him Mr. Nelson. Actually, he was Deacon Nelson.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the guy that was in charge of the Majestics.
Ah,
When we would rehearse in the basement of the church, he was down there, probably an old army guy, had been in the military, so he had been the deacon that they decided was going to teach us all to march. And Mr. Nelson taught me how to march, and he was this big, huge man in my world, and always pushing me,
mm-hmm.
and so he comes to mind.
Mm-hmm.
You spoke about the singing in the church.
Mm-hmm.
Well, from as long as I can ever remember, listening to my mother sing. She was very involved in the choir. She was a member of the Mary Hayton Singers, who were kind of on that network of gospel singers up through Chicago. Yeah, I had Mahalia Jackson at my house one day for dinner.
Wow. Did you
And
know who she was?
oh yeah, my mom made sure I knew who she was.
Wow.
And she was very involved in that, and from earliest memories, listening to her, sing gospels in the kitchen, um, having that feeling, and wanting to share in the way that she shared her voice, singularly with me in the kitchen, or with the 100-piece choir.
Great. Now, you've done a piece about your mother.
Hmm.
But I don't remember that her being such a stellar singer, being a
Oh
part of
yeah,
it.
yeah.
So maybe you have another story. The Mahalia Jackson connection, pretty phenomenal.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of what you're working on now, you've talked about you being involved with the Marsh.
Hmm.
You started taking some classes with Afrosolo and got connected with the Marsh.
Hmm.
Now, the Marsh is a institution now that has the name of a breeding ground
Yeah.
for performances who often take people in their infancy as an artist and helps them grow and develop. And I think you said that's kind of what happened with you.
That is absolutely the situation
And
with
you
me.
said that this is your what, first, second, third, fourth piece?
My third full evening
Full evening.
piece. It's actually my fourth piece. I've written some pieces for middle school performances. I perform in the schools now, but this is my third full evening piece.
Now tell us, what's the title of this piece?
This is called the May Day Parade.
Mm-hmm.
It's bass drums, bugles, and the Baptist Church.
Mm-hmm.
And it talks about uh, um, this great parade that existed in St. Louis and still does. The Annie Malone Children's Orphanage May Day Parade is what it used to be called. And now it's just the May Day Parade, and it still benefits, though, the Annie Malone Children's Service Center, which is still doing great work in St. Louis. But this parade goes back 100 years in the north part of St. Louis, the black community. St. Louis had one of the early black entrepreneurial areas, this area called the Ville. Black businessmen, starting to really kind of feel their way
This
around.
is post-slavery?
This is post-slavery.
after
You're
slavery?
talking early
1900s?
1900s,
Okay.
1920s.
Yeah.
And Annie Malone,
Mm-hmm.
one of the first black women millionaires in the country, made her living selling hair products for Negroes, is what my Mama Bell used to tell me. And she was right there with the men, and did a lot of good work. These businessmen put together the May Day Parade as a benefit for the Annie Malone Children's Orphanage at the time, early on. And so obviously I grew up in St. Louis. You grew up with that parade, and it was such a prideful event for the black community. So it talks about me at 8, finally getting my chance to be in the parade. But as much as anything else, it talks about that period of time, early 60s, the community there, how the church was a foundation for so much, how family, however the makeup was, pretty maternal in this situation, but how it nurtured and developed. It also speaks to polio. I had polio when I was young, so it speaks to that. But it's about the family, culture, community.
Good. Now, the May Day Parade, the piece, it's about this parade. Is it about people who were in the parade? Is it autobiographical? Is it semi-biographical?
It is. It is as much about a family walking down an alley to a parade as it is about the parade itself. And as you see these characters moving down this alley toward that parade, you start to find, the hierarchy and how people work together, or agendas, or all of those things that are wonderful about families and also very scary about families. So it really takes a very universal approach to kind of a quirky idiom band.
And how many characters do you play?
Well, I think I'm doing 15.
Do you have one that you can sort of give us a taste
Absolutely.
of? Tell us who this character is, and let's maybe a minute.
Okay, Mr. Nelson, the man who I spoke to about earlier, Deacon Nelson. He would sit at the entrance at the bottom of these stairs to the basement of Pleasant Green Missionary Baptist Church. He'd always be sitting there, he'd have suspenders on, a shirt, white shirt, buttoned to the top, no tie. And he always hitched his pants up way high when he talked, Hold on, young man. Well, you got your 50 cent? You cannot march with us without your dues paid. If you want to be a Majestic, you got to pay 50 cents. Now, Mr. Nelson smelled like my father. My father always smelled like Budweiser. Yeah, come on in here, young man. I can see you ready to strut your stuff. It's a wonder that house of hens let you come up in here. That's why your daddy stay on them trains. But you here with me now. We gonna see what you got. That's Mr. Nelson.
That's wonderful. And when they go see this, they will see a whole lot more of this family. Now, in terms of the work that you do, how does it speak to being Black or African American today?
Well, one of the things that we hear a lot of talk about right now are faith-based, community-based agencies or programs. And if nothing else, my work speaks to the value of family. I started doing this process. My first piece, you mentioned, was about my mother. I started writing this piece because my mother was battling cancer at the time. And I had been away from home a long time. I taught in Canada for 10 years. I was out on the West Coast for years. And I had kind of gotten disconnected. Well, during my mother's illness, I started getting reconnected
with her?
And during that process, journaling.
Yes, okay.
And starting to realize the history that was there and wanting to grab it as quickly as I could and be able to share that history. That's what got me going.
And putting some of that history on the stage. Well, that's marvelous. Now, we need to mention a couple of things about David Ford.
Oh,
now, who's David Ford?
Who is David Ford? That's a large question. David Ford, first and foremost, is my director. And he is a blessing. He works with various people at the Marsh and all over San Francisco, for that matter. Brian Copeland, you may be familiar with, Charlie Varon, many other people. And I have been very lucky to have him as my director for these last 3 productions.
It has been so nice to have you here, Wayne, to talk to us about May Day Parade. You've been watching another episode of Afrosolo TV. This is Thomas Simpson with Afrosolo. Get a chance to go to the library and check out our visual arts exhibit. Otherwise, we'll see you next time.